Today we're going to discuss perimeter, area, volume, and line plots with a little bit of review of fractions. Make sure if you haven't, like and subscribe. We're going to start with perimeter. Remember, when finding perimeter for any polygon has to have straight sides enclosed in. You add all the sides. This doesn't work for a circle because, well, it's not a polygon. When finding area, there's two important polygons that we're going to have to know for 5th grade, and that's a triangle and a square, and rectangles. To find a triangle, you do base times height divided by 2. For a square or rectangle, you have to multiply the length and the width. And remember, all of your areas are squared. Now, volume, we're only going to find rectangular prisms. This is where you have a square or rectangle on the top and the bottom, not ones that come to points. Those are called pyramids. And we're going to practice just a few. Now, the first one we're going to start with is perimeter. Remember, with perimeter on these, we're going to add all the sides. So this is a parallelogram, so opposite sides are equal. So we're going to have to add together 8.24 centimeters plus 8.24 centimeters plus 3.9 centimeters plus 3.9 centimeters. And I always put the zeros just to help line up my decimals. And you're going to end up with the number, let me add these together real quick, 24 and 28 hundredths centimeters. And since it's not area, I don't have to square it. Now, estimating this will help if you struggle with adding, decimals or fractions. If you look, I get the estimated number of 26, and that's not too terribly far off. We're actually going to flip to the next page and try area. The other perimeter problems you will do at a later time. Remember, area of a square, you multiply the length and the width. If it's a triangle, you multiply the base times the height and divide that by 2. So we're going to start with number 1, where we multiply the length and the width, 5.8 centimeters times 3.2. Now, if I was to round it, it would be 6 times 3, which is 18. Let's see if our answer is pretty close to 18. Remember, you're always going to jump your decimals forward, then you got to jump them back. I get the answer of 18.56 centimeters squared, which is pretty close. See, 6, 3, 18. We're not too far off. Now, let's look at the triangle. It's going to have the problem, or the formula, 18.9 times 5.7 divided by 2. If I round it, 20 times 5 is 100. 100 divided by 2 is 50. That's going to be pretty close. Now, you're actually going to have to work that one out because we're going to go on to volume. Remember, volume is length times width times height. So we're going to have 9.6 meters times 8 meters times 6.2 meters. 9.6 times 8, if I work that out, I need to jump the decimal and then jump it back. I get 76.8. That's the area of the bottom. And I multiply it by 6.2, which I'm going to need a little bit more space for. Remember, you need to jump your decimals and multiply 768 by the 2. And then you're going to end up multiplying 768 by the 6, which is really a 60. When I multiply 768 by 2, I get 1,536. When I multiply it by the 60, what do I get? 46,080. I add those together, I jump my decimal back, and my answer is 476 and 16 hundredths miles cubed. Now for this, the line plots, most of it's, I'm going to give you help with a little bit of it, and then you're going to see in a little bit longer, I'm going to put the answers for each one of them up there. But if I'm finding the longest book, I look for the one that actually has an X as far as I can to the right. To find the smallest, I go as far as I can to the left. Now is where you pause the video and work the rest of the problems out, and then you're going to come back and check your work versus mine.